Be strong.
Meanwhile, the butler once again raises concerns about the book that has disappeared. But the patriarch explains that it is fine, because someone has now learned the technique that was conserved in the book. He adds that it wasn't a training technique anyway, expressing that the book would have rotted away among the huge collection of bookshelves if it were not for his grandson. He then sits on his throne, suggesting that now things might have to take a turn and change for a bit. His tone tells us that he is skeptical and alerted to the possible dangers that may arise. In contrast to the patriarch's worries, our hero contemplates the strange new technique that he has been gifted with. While observing and assessing his new technique, a question arises: why did the patriarch gift him such a powerful technique? He elaborates that this technique is something that not even the gold plaque equals in value. Now positioning himself in a state of full concentration, he adds that such a technique does not lag behind the Ring of Fire, which is also a legend in the martial arts world. This is what makes it really worth learning. But achieving such goals is not supposed to be easy, which is evident when he sees himself approach a burning fire. He reaches his hand out to grab the fire, but to his surprise, the burning fire shifts position and moves away from his hand. Our hero now opens his eyes, acknowledging that he has failed again. He adds that he keeps trying to collect the aura, but fails each time. Emphasizing the difficult nature of the technique of this level, he remarks that it was bound to not be so easy for him to learn. Abruptly voicing his opinion, Wrath now addresses the young warrior and states that things do not seem to be working out for him the way he wants them to. Still, he tells him to keep at it, explaining that it will not be pretty if anyone tries to touch him while he is in such a state, so he must be careful. He remarks that Leon has learned a really good technique, and it would be a shame if he were to be disabled before mastering it. Working out what the spirit is scheming, Leon dives into deep contemplation over the facts, as he concludes that maybe Wrath is right. Leon is deep in thought as he narrates and explains the Thousand Flames technique. He elaborates that it is a training technique that lets a person absorb the nature's energy to build aura inside their core. He adds that if the process is interrupted at the wrong moment, it might permanently damage the mana circuits or the mana core. He expresses that it is exceptionally dangerous for him, because he already has the bitter cold curse in his mana circuits. Now addressing the spirit, he asks him not to interrupt the process if that much is acknowledged, but the spirit of the demon lord has a suspicious smile on his face. Leon now suddenly notices a hostile energy coming off of Wrath, and Wrath smiles wide, elaborating that he will only interrupt him once during his training. Our hero remarks that such a mistake will lead to the spirit having a damaged body too, which would be a loss for him, but Wrath does not seem to care and is quite persistent. He viciously smiles at his target, explaining that Leon would not be able to overcome the feeling because he is human, and he expresses that even if Leon's limbs are cut off or his energy core explodes, he can still bring him back. Wrath now reveals his evil scheme as he moves closer to the young warrior, and expresses that when the target will have become unable to use his energy core and give everything up, that would be the best chance for him to strike. Shockingly, Leon is not bothered by the vile schemes of Wrath, and instead, he agrees with Wrath to allow him to do it just once, to see what it is that he can do. Wrath has now become cocky and confident that his plan will work, and he flies around the room with his blazing fire following him. He scoffs at Leon as he expresses that the young warrior should be living in fear, because the Lord of the Demon Realm will strike him at any time. Assessing the scheming spirit, Leon now acknowledges Wrath as his enemy, and concludes that the Demon Lord will take over his body the first chance he gets when the time comes. Thinking that the incarnation of rage, Wrath, would have stopped scheming because he did not try anything recently, Leon expresses that he was relieved. But now, he has no choice left but to be alert again. This is followed by an exhausted sigh, as he states that Wrath is someone to worry about later, and he now has to focus on more important things. Leon then walks up to the window of his room, and Wrath questions if he intends to do it now. Our hero confirms, stating that it's not a coincidence, since the woman visits there every night. He now stares out his window. Wrath follows him around as well, and as they both peer out the window, they find a certain maid slouching by the riverside. Leon says that he will go and take care of the matter. The maid is revealed to be someone called Judiel, and she profusely writes on a piece of paper as she states that she usually has nothing to report other than muttering. But she exclaims that today, she has found something interesting. Judiel contemplates what she has to report, and she expresses that she never would have thought that the young master would get such a valuable training technique as a reward for just the bronze plaque. She adds that while observing Leon, the mana flow that she felt while he had been training his aura earlier was out of the ordinary. Continuing to write, she expresses that such information is definitely worth noting for the intermediate martial hall too. Now concluding the report, she folds up the paper in front of her as she tells herself that even if she has been ordered to do this, the victim is only a child, and she wonders how long she has to do this for. She places the folded paper upon the river that flows in front of her. The paper floats away on the water, and the maid takes a sigh of relief. But just then, a blade suddenly appears, pressed against her neck. She was just about to leave, when suddenly she now faces this strange and mysterious anomaly. Nervousness takes over Judiel as she starts to sweat. The mysterious man stands behind her with a blade pressed against her throat, and with a heavy voice that screams with murderous intent, the man claims that if she moves or speaks, she will meet the face of death. The man commands Judiel to look down at the lake, and she obediently tilts her head forward, nervously wondering who it is. She questions who could possess such terrible bloodlust. Just as she gazes upon her reflection in the lake, her eyes fall upon the face of the mysterious man that threatens her, and she is taken by surprise when she finds out that the one with such bloodthirst is none other than our hero, which makes her wonder how the kid had managed to sneak up on her at all. Leon now confronts the spy. He moves closer to her ear, as he states that he has felt a pair of eyes watching over him since the day he came back to the annex, and he asks if the spy had gotten the information that she wanted. This unmasking startles Judiel and takes her by surprise. She expresses it to be impossible as her eyes widen in shock, and she exclaims that she had thought she hid her presence perfectly. But then, the realization dawns upon her that Leon was simply pretending to not know. Pressing the blade further against her neck, Leon threatens her once again and commands her to open her mouth. She hesitantly opens it, and our hero shoves some sort of mysterious ball deep into her throat. Judiel gags and belches as she swallows the strange thing, and bends down to get a hold of herself when Leon lets go of her and steps away into the lake. He picks up the letter she had been writing, and opens it up to find nothing written on it. He realizes that he is not able to see the contents of the letter, and speculates that he may need some special method to make the words visible again. Leon now exclaims that the correct answer is moonlight, and upon hearing that, there is a look of despair and desperation on Judiel's face as she glares at her vicious young master. Judiel's voice shakes, and she trembles in confusion. She asks how Leon was able to know, but without answering her question, Leon now narrates the names of people from the Zycart family: Alice, Daniel, and Karin. Just narrating a few of the family members' names, our hero concludes the perpetrator to be Karin Zycart. He claims that this is Karin Zycart's doing, which makes Judiel lose the color on her face. Her eyes widen, and she grits her teeth in agitation. She deems it impossible for Leon to be able to know all this so easily, when she is sure her face did not change when he recited the names. She adds that she has been trained to be a good spy, so there's no way he could have read the answer from just her face. But just then, the truth clicks in her mind. In a daze, she acknowledges the pain that burns through her body, and Rayon's unexpected ability to read her thoughts so easily. This compels her to believe that what she had swallowed earlier was none other than a rage worm, the very thought of which sends waves of horror in her body. Traveling back in time, a flashback takes us back to when Karin commanded Judiel to infiltrate the annex and report every single detail about Sylvia and Leon. Karin offers her a reward. If she does well in this mission, he promises to make her wish come true, whatever it may be. Now returning to the present, she confronts our hero and blatantly asks if he has fed her a rage worm. Leon is taken aback to see that the maid knows about it, because that's not what he had expected. Judiel, however, has nothing she can do to reverse the effects now, but still, she immediately belches and gags in an attempt to spit out the rage worm from her system. Tears fill up her eyes as she squeals and pants heavily. She expresses it to be the worst curse, one that lets others know about the emotions of the person that ate it. But the horror doesn't end there, since the life of the cursed individual can be taken away by the owner simply by wishing it. She also acknowledges Leon's reaction, and concludes that he has definitely fed her a rage worm. Leon then states that sending a letter like this to Karin Zycart must mean that she is a spy of the Intermediate Martial Hall. He raises his assumption that the plan must have begun around 7 months ago, probably at the time of the judgment ceremony. He then reads out the contents of the letter as he remarks it to be quite detailed, elaborating that Judiel has not only written information about him, but also about Sylvia, Helen, and all the other maids in the annex. Judiel is now cursing her past self for taking on this mission, and thinking that it would have been easy since Sylvia had broken energy core and mana circuits. She actually believed that she could have gotten this done easily. But as she assesses Leon's behavior and vicious intent, she concludes that the child that stands before her is not a child, but a monster instead. Judiel is now desperate for redemption, and will do anything she can to get out of this mess. She yells out in desperation, claiming that she will change the contents of the letter and put something false inside it. But our hero is not buying this, and he states that there is no need since his information will be leaked to Karin eventually. He adds that such an act will just prove her to be unskilled, nothing else. He now crouches down to face the spy maid, and glares into her eyes with a murderous intent. At the fierce and intimidating aura of the child, Judiel can do nothing but tremble. Leon tells her that from now on, she is to become a double spy. He elaborates that she can give information to others that they will eventually find out anyway, but will be careful to leave out the important information. He then demands that she also bring him information that he wants, and Judiel hesitantly agrees as her voice shakes with fear. Concluding this confrontation, the young warrior now passes a warm smile, and makes his leave, telling the spy maid that he hopes she has some useful information the next time he sees her. As our hero passes through the forest and makes his way back home, Wrath appears to ask the young warrior when he managed to summon a rage worm. But, as expected of our hero, he elaborates that he would never do something so cruel. Instead, he had just fed her something that would cause extreme pain for a bit. This surprises Wrath, who is amazed that the boy managed to gather all that information without the use of the rage worm. Leon explains that there are all kinds of methods to gain information, and even if others might not know of them, things are different for him. Wrath is also taken aback by this claim from the young master, and he recalls the spy maid calling him a monster. At this moment, the demon lord can't help but wonder if she was right. Moving forward with the story, Leon now narrates to tell us that he started focusing on training his aura, and soon enough, it was time for him to leave the annex for the training hall once again. He leaves the annex, while Judiel nervously stands beside Sylvia, accompanying the young master's mother. He says that even after having put so much effort into his aura, he was still unable to make it on the day of departure. Appearing at the training hall, Leon now observes the small number of trainees standing before him on the battleground, and notices that only about 42 people have passed the test to make it here. He recalls Lemmer's words, who had said that only a quarter of the trainees will be left behind. He also remarks that Lemmer is really precise about these kinds of things, when suddenly, a voice calls out his name. He turns his head to find Lunan trying to approach him. The girl steps forward to turn and face Leon, while he nervously stands in front of her. This is when some context is dropped. A few days earlier, at the Sleon family residence, a voice calls Lunan to question her if Master Leon had helped with her training. She agrees to answer the question, while she munches down on her favorite snack, cookies. Her mother sits across from her on the table, and asks her if she had thanked him for it. Lunan answers that she did when she received a cookie from him, but this is not what her mother is asking. She repeats the question, and once again asks if Lunan had thanked Leon for helping her with her training. The girl then answers and says that she didn't. This confuses her mother, as she questions why that is the case. Lunan exclaims and answers that her father had said to never talk to a guy first. Hearing this, Lunan's mother passes a wide smile as she now begins to confront her daughter. She explains that gender doesn't matter when someone expresses gratitude, and tells Lunan that when she receives help, she should always say thanks in return. As her mother's words echo through her mind, we are finally brought back to the present. Lunan now thanks Leon, which is responded to by a confused and nervous affirmation. The boy nervously steps away in confusion as Wrath appears before him, questioning what is up with the girl. Leon responds that he does not know either. Watching Lunan leave, a voice suddenly calls upon him, and he turns his head to see who it is. Dorian breathes heavily and attempts to catch his breath, as if he has just come after running a marathon. After asking how the young master is doing, he exclaims that he thought he was going to die because he was a provisional trainee. Dorian goes over how hard it has been for him to qualify as an actual trainee, which even gave him nightmares and took away his sleep. But Leon is fed up with this long rant, as he spews out all the words from his other ear after listening from the first. Dorian expresses that he's glad that Leon is the top trainee, and he was about to say something mean about Burn, when suddenly, Burn walks up behind him, taking him by surprise. He glares down at Dorian with vicious intent, and Dorian immediately squeals in fear before falling to the ground. But Burn walks past Dorian and steps forward to face our hero, and there is a moment of brief silence between the two as they stare at each other. Until Burn suddenly bends down and bows in front of Leon. He apologizes and admits that he behaved pathetically a week ago at the training hall tests, and he also states that he acknowledges his defeat in the duel that they had. But that's not all he had to say. He remarks that he has not given up yet, and exclaims that he will keep on trying hard so that he can surpass him in the future. Saying this, Burn then takes off, leaving our hero standing there in a daze. Observing Burn's sudden change in behavior, he assesses that a 13-year-old child admitting his wrongs is unexpected. But then again, a renowned family isn't renowned for no reason. They usually tend to have the class to back it up. This sparks up rage and fury in Wrath, who flares up at the bastard who got beat up badly, but still does not know his place. He exclaims that he is going to go and poke out his eye, but Leon asks Wrath to calm down, because it was pretty impressive for a kid. Wrath does not seem to cool down though. He says that he does not care for it to be impressive. That's when Lemmer calls out to the students, apologizing for his late arrival. He explains that he had a lot to drink last night, so he had to sleep in. Rather enthusiastically, he asks if all the students had a nice break. Now continuing with the training, Lemmer once again stands on stage in front of the students, congratulating them on becoming official trainees. But then, he alerts the students that the real training begins from today. He adds that the basic routine is to be the same, but quite a few regimes would be added to it as well. Leon carefully listens over the directions of the head instructor, when suddenly, a loud bang diverts the attention of the students, who turn their heads around to witness the commotion. A voice calls out and announces that the first part of training is aura training. A girl is revealed to be standing before the gate to the training hall, as she curses and remarks that the door gave her a hard time. Dorian exclaims in horror and shock after recognizing the girl, and Lemmer greets her as she steps up, mentioning her to be a failed trainee from last year. Lemmer continues and tells the students that they have to continue training with her from now on, introducing her to be Martha Zygarde of the direct lineage. Martha glares down at the students, and Lemmer notices the vicious look, so he attempts to lighten the mood as he comforts the students that she is kinder than she looks. However, Lemmer is cut off, and Martha takes over. She stands in between to question who the top trainee among the new students is, and everyone immediately turns their heads around at Leon. Solidifying her animosity, Martha elaborates that she hates having someone who is worse than her, but stands at a higher position. She exclaims that she needs to check who the top trainee is, and calls out to challenge the student to a fight. Enthusiastically anticipating a brawl, Martha calls out to our hero. She really wants to test out who the top trainee really is. Skeptical of the sudden challenge, Leon nervously wonders what it is up with his luck, and why does he keep getting involved with weird people. Nevertheless, he steps out among the students and announces that he is the top trainee, and Martha gazes upon the young trainee with a smirk on her face. She exclaims in arrogance that someone like him does not seem fitting to be the top trainee, but she moves on and proceeds to crack her knuckles, asking him to start with the duel right away. However, just when the fight is about to begin, Burin interrupts and calls out to her, commenting that her behavior is not very dignified. Martha takes offense at such a claim and growls in anger, questioning what the bastard has just said to her. She then walks up to Burin, glaring into his eyes as she threatens that he better watch his mouth, or he might end up dead. She elaborates that he must learn to choose his words wisely the next time he speaks to her. But Burin persists, saying that Leon proved himself to be the top trainee in front of the patriarch and the head instructor. He questions if she intends to deny that, but she exclaims that the one accusing her of such blasphemy also stood up to deny the fact before her. She justifies her actions, saying that it is why she is doing this too. Burin now has a changed heart, and he expresses that he does not want anyone else to be as pathetic as he was back then. Observing this change of behavior, Leon remarks that the guy really has changed. Before things escalate further, Lunan has suddenly appeared before Leon, standing in between him and Martha, and she extends her arms as she asks Martha to go away. Everyone is surprised by this, and Martha scoffs, stating it to be quite funny. She mentions the great love that the trainees have for themselves, but she hysterically questions if they are backing him up as his minions. Accepting that there is no point in pressing the matter further, she now walks away. Stating that she will be labeled as the stupid one if she keeps on pushing, she decides to honor the public opinion and move away. But before you know it, a vicious smile appears on her face, and in the blink of an eye, she now appears in the sky, approaching our hero as she states that she hates cowards who hide behind others, even more than arrogant bastards. Lunan and Burin are taken by surprise at such lightning speed, and they immediately turn their heads in concern. But Martha charges forward with her fist clenched, exclaiming that she will beat up the coward as she pleases. This does not prove to work, and Martha is easily handled by Leon, who dodges her fist and smacks her down. It's clear from her face that she cannot make sense of what's happening, wondering how her punch did not land. Just as she looks up to locate her target, her eye glances upon a fist that charges right at her. The punch connects, and Martha is blown away with the attack as she slides across the ground. Burin is startled, and Lemmer calmly observes the commotion with a smile on his face. Martha's eyes now open wide with her mouth agape, as she attempts to make sense of what had just happened. She is left speechless, and after a brief moment when the realization of failure dawns upon her, she scoffs, letting her anger quickly take over her body. Now enraged, she yells out to question what the hell has happened. Dark aura surrounds her body as she slowly steps forward, crushing and cracking the ground below her feet with each step she takes. She calls upon our hero, and raises her fist as she states that he will not be walking home today. But before things proceed any further, her fist is caught by the head instructor, as he states that the both of them have greeted each other enough. Martha is taken aback by the sudden appearance of the head instructor as she wonders when he appeared before her to grab her fist. Noticing this skeptical look, Lemmer questions why these guys are underestimating him a bit, and he elaborates that even if he's not as scary as the other instructors or family heads, he expresses that it's a bit upsetting to be treated like he doesn't exist. He addresses Martha as he mentions that Leon has not even started learning aura yet, and he asks her if she doesn't think that she would be winning by cheating if she fights him now. Annoyed by Lemmer's remarks and ongoing rant, she smacks away his hand to release herself from his grip, and Lemmer states that she can fight the young warrior once he has learned aura. She adds that she was going to stop anyway. The head instructor then commands the young trainee to head over to his spot, too, and he obeys. Martha also walks away with a frustrated look on her face. Wrath does not seem to be too happy with this conclusion to the brawl as he flares up in rage and he questions Leon's actions. He asks if he is not going to punish the woman who tried to punch him, exclaiming that he wouldn't be satisfied even if he were to rip off her limbs and lock her up in a glacier. Geez, that's a bit harsh. Our hero expresses that he did manage to land a punch, though, but this is still not enough for the spirit of the Demon Lord, as he claims that her skull must be crushed. But with a calm mind, Leon states that now is not the time. He walks as he plans and speculates that it's much better to bet over the top trainee spot when he has something better he can take from her. Wrath observes him and he wonders what the young warrior is planning. Following the other students, they walk into the training hall after Lemmer and he asks Wrath to wait, because he will get his revenge later. The sun falls as time passes by, and upon the scene of the setting sun, the students stand in lines as they perform multiple stances, and that is when Lemmer announces a 10-minute break. The focus now shifts over to Burn, who takes a sip of his water to rehydrate and recover. He then looks over at his hands to contemplate his success, and he elaborates that it's not easy. He adds that it was not hard for him up until the second level, but he raises concern for the third level because of the advanced principles that are mixed in the training regime. Now turning his head, he looks over at our hero as he observes him and concludes that even though he started from scratch, he was able to learn the training regime in just a month. Comparing himself to our hero, he elaborates that it took him a month just to learn the 7-form fist, and he worries that at this rate, Leon will be able to move on to swordsmanship training at the same time as him. His attention is diverted by the constant clattering of wooden swords upon the targets, and he turns his head and observes that it's not only him who feels rushed. He notices it to be Martha Zygarde, who trains diligently without taking the break while everyone else rests. Now breathing heavily and catching her breath, Martha takes a brief moment to reflect upon her progress as she compares it with Leon's. She mentions that this must be his first time learning fist techniques, which confuses her as she questions how he can improve so quickly. She adds that it's not like he knows the fist techniques already like Burin and Lunan. Still, she expresses that even with the bitter cold curse, his body is not in a normal state, which raises the question, how is he able to train all day? Worrisome and frustrated, she grits her teeth and expresses agitation as she exclaims that she cannot fall behind. Now, for a quick backstory, we are told that she has always been referred to as the horrible talent, because she had fallen behind everyone else in her year. And she narrates her story. She was always the chaser, ever since she was adopted by the Zygarde family. She surpassed all the other kids who were arrogant and boasted about their direct or indirect lineage title and who called themselves geniuses. Martha laughed at their despair. She believed herself to be a genius, claiming that she always has been better than the others. However, her complex and anxiousness has gotten to the point where she can hardly deal with it. Later in the day, Martha walks forward into her annex as a servant greets her and commends her good work, but the girl does not pay heed to the servant as she passed next to him. The man observes the anxious miss, and he calls out to tell her that there is no need to feel rushed or hurried. This surprises her as she stops in her way, and she turns around to face the man. She asks the man about such a claim, and he elaborates that the young Master Leon has been surprising a lot of people lately. However, he remarks that he will never be able to win against her. This grabs Martha's attention, so she asks the servant what makes him think that. This is when he explains that the young master has a critical weakness, something that he can never overcome. The scene then switches, and a wooden sword clatters and swishes in the air as our hero performs different moves and practices his swordsmanship. He sighs and briefly catches his breath when a group of 2 students walk up to him as he trains, and one of them begins to ask him something about their posture. He wants Leon to look at their posture, but chickens out at the last second and steps back without asking the question. The student that accompanies him expresses frustration as he states that Leon's swordsmanship is just too good. An applause echoes through the training hall as Martha approaches our hero and commends his training. She states that she did not expect him to be training alongside her in such a short period of time, and she remarks that he learns fast. However, she also points out his bad mana sensitivity, exclaiming that it's pointless when all this hard work will amount to nothing. Silence fills the room as the students quietly observe Martha dropping the harsh words upon Leon. She mentions that at this rate, he will at least be able to become a swordsmanship instructor. Lemmer also stands beside the students as he observes the commotion quietly. This silence does not go unnoticed by Martha as she leaves, and she concludes she had expected for no one to speak up. She elaborates that no one would have thought that the idiot will still not have mastered aura, even after 4 months. We return back to the night when the butler addresses his concern with our hero to Martha. He adds that the young master has 0 talent when it comes to aura, elaborating that since this was before she was adopted, she wouldn't have known. Then, he goes on to tell that upon the judgment ceremony, the young master, Leon's mana sensitivity, was the lowest it could ever be. He exclaims that the only person yet to learn aura in the 5th training hall is the young master Leon. Further elaborating, he states that the bronze plaque that he received will only get him a training technique that's intermediate, or something just a bit above average. The man continues to state that considering that the young master has not yet mastered a training technique, he presses that he's sure that Leon's judgment ceremony results are correct. He concludes that though the young master may be the best in swordsmanship and combat, he cannot handle aura very well. This information lights up Martha's face as she widely smiles before bursting out in joy and laughter, and the man finishes his assessment as he states that the young master can never become a proper martial artist. Back in the present, Martha arrogantly plays with her hair as she expresses that she's still mad that she lost to that halfling, but she adds that he wasn't someone that she needed to concern herself with in the first place. Just as she dwells in her own thoughts, her attention is diverted and she is alerted when she notices Lunan standing beside her. Confused and curious, she asks if Lunan has something to say to her. Lunan blatantly speaks and asks Martha to go. This surprises her as she scoffs and questions if this was all she had to say, but Lunan presses further and asks her to leave. To save some face, Martha plays it off by signaling to go away, but before she leaves, she boasts that she just needs to attend an advanced lesson meant just for direct bloodlines. Lunan observes her quietly as the brash girl takes her leave. Night falls, and inside the training hall, our hero sits across the training sets as he refreshes and concludes his training for today. He looks over at his hands and expresses that it's fun. Before he recalls on his past life and states that on the battlefield, he learned not martial arts, but survival tactics and how to kill. The only thing that improved were his assassination skills. He expresses that at the time, he could not even imagine trying to learn something new. However, now he exclaims that he enjoys learning martial arts and expresses that he did not know how fun it would be, adding that he loves to learn the art to improve himself. Wrath then suddenly appears before him, and flares up violently as he yells out and asks our hero if he finally gets it, elaborating and questioning why he didn't do anything when he was being insulted. But Leon is just confused at this weird barrage of belittlement. The spirit of the Lord of the Demon Realms then elaborates that the black-haired girl kept on muttering things about him. Leon is surprised to know of such information, and explains that he did not hear her say anything because he was too focused. Wrath then comments that Leon needs to care more, exclaiming that he would have frozen her on the spot if she were to say those kinds of things about him. But Leon states that as he has told before, there is no benefit to fighting her now. He steps up to leave as he adds that even without the Thousand Flames technique, he can beat someone like her easily. Leon slides the door in front of him to leave just as he says this, when suddenly, he finds Lunan standing before him as the door opens. This comes as a surprise and he asks why she is here. She holds a box in her hands and before she speaks anything, she reaches in and takes out a cookie. The girl offers the cookie to our hero as she asks him to eat, and he observes the cookie to conclude that it is strangely cool. Lunan notices his skeptical nature and presses that he eats the cookie. Leon feels taken aback by her insistence and proceeds to put the treat in his mouth. He expresses that as an assassin, he has learned not to eat whatever someone gives them, but he remarks that he trusts Lunan to not give him something bad. Just as he swallows the cookie down his throat, his eyes widen in shock and wrath appears before him, exclaiming that he has never tasted something so sweet in his demon realm, and he adds that the coldness makes it even better. He is curious to know what it's made of. Wrath swirls around Leon in joy, asking for more of this good stuff. Meanwhile, Lunan asks him how he feels about the cookie, and Leon nervously states that it's good.